For any economy to thrive, it needs schools that work and children that graduate, and also then those children to get the right skills. This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight, I'm joined by Edward Kieswetter. He's the chief executive of Alexander Forbes by day, but in his spare time, he's going to be running something called the Vinci Institute. Well, not really running it, but he certainly bought a big shareholding in it. You got involved with them before you bought a stake, Edward, as what do they call you? Chancellor? President of an education. Mr. President. Look, I mean, we've all got big ambitions. But you are particularly strong on education, the requirement for education, and education is the bedrock for any potential future hope that we've got for our country.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce, I've never left school. From the moment I finished matric, went on to tertiary education, I loved it so much I stayed there and have been involved as a teacher in education full-time for 9 years of my life, and as a visiting professor and teacher ever since then. And I love education. I think education is the one thing that can save us, and we need to make more investments in education. And my passion has led me to Vinci. Roy and I met many years ago.
Who's Roy?
Roy
you're talking like a movie star who talks about the director, you see. Yes. Roy Marcus, so, but the Vinci Institute is what? It's a post-grad distance learning university?
No, so the Vinci Institute is a private university in terms of the Act. It is registered, it awards degrees. It started out looking at master's programs and at PhDs, and we very proudly will award our first cohort of BCom graduates in September this year. The focus of Da Vinci is very, very important. You know, we find that many university students come out of university having learned a sound, grounded academic foundation, but can't walk into a job and do anything with it. And there's this huge distance between academic learning and the reality of the world of work. So the Da Vinci Institute is really focused on the production of knowledge that builds managerial capacity.
So are you somewhere between UNISA and a business school? I mean, how would you position yourselves?
Well, we're probably closer to a business school than a university. UNISA is a broad university offering everything from. What we are focused on is managerial leadership, specifically in design, technology, and innovation.
Okay. Now, this Da Vinci Institute, it's what, nearly 20 years old?
It's been 10 years old.
10 years old. So it's been around the block. It's got a track record. What is it about this particular model that attracts you, though? Because not only are you happy to go and be Chancellor, stroke President, but you've actually bought a shareholding in the business. And as somebody who is committed to education, that's a big statement of intent.
It is. And I one day when I finally hang up my boots as a chief executive, I want to go back and teach, but make a contribution towards education broadly, but specifically leadership education, because I believe that leadership in any organization, in any country, is the defining attribute that builds great nations, great organizations, or can destroy it.
Okay, 100%. How many people are going through the doors or through the post box, it is a distance learning institute, of Da Vinci?
So on average we have just under 2,000 students. We have primarily a business-to-business relationship, which means we go to large corporates, we design specific programs for that corporate, but programs that can build up towards a formal degree at a master's or a PhD level. And then we have our specific philosophy is that it has to be action learning. The students are then required to go into the real workplace, take real problems in the organization and solve that for the organization, which is why we are supported by corporates largely. But we also register private students, and obviously they get the benefit of the same learning experience.
Now, traditionally, you go to an MBA class, you get put into a syndicate, you go to your lectures, you come back to your syndicate, you work on projects together, you divide up the project, you work yourselves into a stupor. Some people manage it full-time, some people get divorced, some people do it part-time over 3 or 4 years. What sort of profile are you in here? Because without the lectures and without the syndicates and getting people together, a lot of what you say, the MBA nature of it is lost, surely.
By the way, how do you know someone has an MBA?
Because they tell you.
They tell you.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't told you, have I? Because I haven't.
Bruce, so even an MBA program, and I can tell you that I have one, you learn different aspects of management. You learn HR, a bit of finance.
Yeah.
It's really a general degree. What it doesn't always do is integrate that into what it means to be a managerial leader. And so one of the things that that the Vinci model is, it's about taking the various disciplines but integrating it in an applied way.
Now,
So
is this for South Africa? Because one looks at, I mean, because from a branding perspective, it becomes quite important. If I'm going to make a choice between a rejuvenated Wits Business School or Gibbs or Stellenbosch or UCT or one of the many other MBA programs in the country, and then I've got this thing called the Da Vinci Institute, and I'm going, so what's the cred? Who's it tied to? Can I go to INSEAD for a month? Can I go to Harvard for a bit?
So the Vinci Institute they do short courses, certificate courses, but our flagship program will be the master's and the PhD programs. So I think there's a role for MBA programs. There's a role for, but much like you can never be too old to do an MBA program. You can be too young, and many youngsters end up in an MBA program, but they don't have the work experience to make sense and to integrate this learning. So we are focused to take students, and generally senior students who've done the basic degrees, and to help them create a mental model and a synthesized approach to saying, how do I take all of, because it is an academic institution, it has to be in order to award degrees, but then how do I synthesize this knowledge into a workable practice that I can go back to work and add real value?
If you are helping 2,000 students a year, how are you going to change the world? You're an idealist by nature. You like to believe that you can change the world. Is that big enough?
Yes, but what I need to tell you is, first of all, you can't change the world. You can do two things, though.
You get other people to change the world.
No, you can do two things. The first is you can become the change you wish to see in the world.
Yes.
And secondly, you can change the world that you are part of. And so I think my ambition is not to change the world, but to rather, to where I am, begin to demonstrate what change I wish to see in the world. And the Vinci Institute grants me a wonderful opportunity to do that in a real, practical and measurable way.
When you look at the quality of the graduates coming through, the people coming through your ranks, do you sometimes hang your head in despair because of the raw material you're getting out of the schooling system, considering the state of public education, certainly in South Africa right now?
I think we all have an element of disillusionment about the quality of many of our schooling leavers, and therefore the readiness into university. You may know that I have been for 10 years involved as a councillor and until last year the deputy chair of the Council of the University of Free State. So my commitment and exposure to education has been significant. And the experience is very often that because of the inadequate preparation at schooling level, we have a high failure rate, but even those who do graduate often still lack that grounding that schooling should have given. And therefore, at university level, we often do rehabilitative work. We often have to close the gap. But that's the reality of South Africa.
But a tiny proportion of people get the privilege of that. And so how do we broaden the education net?
So, do you know what a MOOC is?
A MOOC?
Yeah.
I have no idea what a MOOC
So
is. It's a character in kids' TV, I know that much, but I don't know the real
So
world.
a MOOC is it's a mass open line online university campus. And so increasingly, by using technology, we can make available coursework to a broader community via a platform. And so we are looking at how do we take because once you've developed a program and it costs you, let's say, 100,000 Rand to develop the program, and you're charging 1,000 Rand per program, after your first 100 students, it's paid for.
Yes.
The marginal cost of the next student is for free.
But you have to have an
if you
adequate
put that
body of students to enroll.
Exactly. But once it's paid for, you can make it available on an open online system. I don't want to market any other campuses, but there's an international campus, for example, that has the following model. They make their coursework available for free. At the end of it, you decide whether you want the certificate or not, and if at that point you want, you press pay. You can walk away with the learning, or you can do the next step. So that's the one. The next example is modularization. And so rather than giving you a full degree, I can give you a mini degree and say, here's a 6-month program, pay as you go. At the end of 6 months, you don't have a degree, but you can have something that makes you employable. If you then choose to, you continue for another module and another module. Every time it's a pay as you go. Every time you get something that makes you more employable, and in 4 years' time, you can have a degree.
Mm. No, I mean,
so there are many models
lots
that
of
can
models.
make it accessible. Also the other thing, you know, a 4-year university degree in a world where the rapid rate of obsolescence of knowledge is off scale and the learning is exponential, you've got to ask yourself a question. You know, 4-year degrees are kind of the only thing. If someone who died 1,000 years ago came back to Earth today, the only thing they will recognize are schools and universities.
But the world of education is changing with this Da Vinci platform that you've now invested into. What do we see from this in the future? How do you scale it up dramatically? Do you have massive ambitions for it? Are you happy for it to grow gradually, to be organic?
I think technology allows us to grow exponentially. So this is not growth by more bricks and mortar. So it's not a conventional campus where you'll build more and more physical resources. Firstly, because we have a dominant business-to-business model, we often use the premises of the company and the resources of the company. Secondly, by using technology, we can reach every home, every young man or young woman who has a mobile. So all of a sudden, your cost and your rate of propagation of that knowledge grows exponentially. And so you don't have to wait 10 years for that. We can do that immediately. And the wonderful thing about technology now is you have something called Moore's Law. You've heard of him.
Absolutely. I've heard of that one I've heard of.
Where the price performance of technology doubles every 12 to 18 months. And what that means is it's becoming cheaper and cheaper to deliver meaningful, life-changing experiences to more and more people, and that's our ambition.
And that's where we'll leave it. Edward Kieswetter, thank you very much. He is not only the chief executive of Alexander Forbes, but the president of the Da Vinci Institute, and now an investor in that institute, a passionate proponent for education as a force to do good and to drive change in a South African environment that is in desperate need of it. There'll be more money makers tomorrow, change makers and rule breakers, and sometimes compliance with the rules as well tomorrow on the Moneymakers. Till then, good night and goodbye.